This is the Resistance Report for July 26, 2017. Good evening. The Resistance Report is not a news program. What we attempt to do is give you context, connect the dots, show you how one news story relates to another. On the view and on the theory, in fact, it's more than the theory, it is right, that in fact everything does relate to each other. Every major story is part of a mosaic, and you've got to understand that mosaic. We're also on podcast in case you want to download that, but the great virtue of doing this live is you can join us live. And please send us your questions and your comments as we go through tonight's program. I guess I want to start with Donald Trump's tweet this morning. Have to start with his tweet this morning saying that transgender people cannot be in the military. That's obvious rubbish. I mean, first of all, a president cannot just arbitrarily say that transgender people cannot be in the military. There are 4,000 transgender people in the military right now. He's not going to just fire them. There is a process. There is a regulatory process. This is part of a larger theme. Our democracy really depends on the rule of law. It is not a dictatorship, in case you forgot. Certainly Donald Trump not only has forgotten, but he never knew that we are a democracy and not a dictatorship. We don't function by simply presidents making orders and expressing fiats and basically determining what the law is going to be. So why did Donald Trump issue that silly statement this morning, which does not have any legal significance? I think it's because, number one, he wanted to give some red meat to the base of the Republican Party, the Donald Trump voters, who have needed some red meat. After all, they're not getting anything. With regard to Donald Trump's economic nationalist agenda, they've got almost nothing. I mean, they're not more jobs. They're not no more manufacturing jobs. There is no NAFTA reversal. The entire Affordable Care Act looks like it is going to stay put. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But the Trump base needs feeding, and Trump needed to say something, he felt, to that base. And so what better than to just give them the red meat of something like transgenders in the military. But here's something else. Because his economic nationalist agenda is not working out, because there is nothing to it, because he's not able to offer his base anything, Donald Trump wants to renew the culture wars. He really wants to go back to the point of time and in time when the big divide in America was between those who believed in right to life and right to choice, abortion or non-abortion, gay rights, transsexuals, all of those things. That's what Donald Trump wants to do right now, because he is falling so far behind, because his poll numbers are falling. He's reaching out for ways to get his polls back up, to get enthusiasm back up. And you can expect that he's going to do more of this. This is just stirring up people in a way that Donald Trump understands how to do. This man doesn't want to govern the United States. He doesn't care about being a president with regard to getting things done. All he cares about is power and money. That's all he has ever cared about. He wants to retain power and make more money. So everything he does has got to be seen through that prism. And the fact that he's losing ground, every poll shows that his poll numbers are the lowest of any president at this point in a presidency. It's going to inspire him to do even more of this kind of stuff. He also wants to steal headlines. Now, this no transgenders in the military position is calculated also to take public attention away from other stuff that's going on right now, and make sure that the news programs and the newspapers and everything else report the transgender issue and not the other stuff, or at least not give them the prominence that they would otherwise be given. And what is that other stuff? Well, for one thing, Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort, you remember, was his campaign manager. He has very close links to Russia. And Paul Manafort yesterday, in closed session, talked with the Senate Intelligence Committee and is going to be talking tomorrow to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Basically, Manafort is a key person here because of all of his connections to Russia and all of his connections to Russian intelligence, arguably. He agreed to give these committees material. Now, there have been a lot of leaks. Donald Trump doesn't want that to be a lead story. He also doesn't want the lead story to be about his unrelenting criticism of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. Now, you might say, well, why is he making all of these tweets and all of these critical comments about Jeff Sessions if he doesn't want it to be the lead story? Well, Donald Trump wants to lay the foundation for getting rid of Jeff Sessions and putting in somebody who is a loyalist to Trump, who will ultimately fire Robert Mueller, the special counsel. That's the Trump plan. But Trump finds that he's been running into a lot of right-wing resistance with regard to firing Jeff Sessions over the last couple of days. In fact, yesterday's Breitbart News. Now, you wouldn't think that yesterday's Breitbart News, of all right-wing organizations and outposts, would be so upset. But it said, and I'm quoting the headline, "Trump versus Trump, POTUS, the President of the United States, endangers immigration agenda." And the Breitbart News also said that the attack on Sessions only serves to highlight Trump's own hypocrisy. Trump's hypocrisy? Breitbart News? A lot of the right wing is outraged because they love Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions is a cultural warrior for them. And so they don't like the idea of Donald Trump getting rid of Jeff Sessions. This is the conflict that's going on in Trump's White House and probably in Trump's head. He wants to lay the groundwork for getting rid of Sessions so he can put in somebody who will fire Mueller, but at the same time he's running into this buzzsaw. So what better way to avoid all of this than putting out a tweet this morning about transsexuals not being allowed in the military? By the way, it's not just the Russian investigation that is leading Trump to criticize the Justice Department and criticize Jeff Sessions. It's also something else that's got very little attention, but it needs to get more attention. It's Trump's vendetta against CNN. I don't know how many of you have been following this, but according to the New York Times, White House advisors have discussed a potential point of leverage over CNN. Trump wants leverage over CNN. He doesn't like all of the criticism he gets from CNN. And what's that point of leverage? Well, CNN's parent company, Time Warner, wants to merge with AT&T. It's a pending merger. The Justice Department has to approve that pending merger. And while analysts say that there is very little to stop the deal from moving forward, Trump's animus toward CNN, with a pliant Justice Department and a pliant Attorney General who will do what Trump wants, could scuttle the deal. So that's really what Trump wants. He wants to sound the threat towards CNN and every other news outlet that he has the potential and the ability and the power to shut off criticism of him. Not just through tweets and through negative statements, but also through public policy. Now, again, this is what the Times reports that the White House has been considering. That a president and his assistants would even consider trying to control the news media and trying to control bad news by punishing news outlets that dare criticize a president by issuing public policies that hurt that news media financially. That itself is an outrage. I mean, that itself violates our fundamental democratic principles, not just the freedom of the press, but also the rule of law. keep an eye on that one. Now, the other thing that Trump would like to keep off the immediate front pages or the news headlines is what's happening in the Senate right now. That is the vote, or the would-be vote, to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I'm sure you've been following this. The Senate can't get its act together. The Republicans have been trying to get 50 votes. They need 50 Republican senators out of 52 to vote on a particular repeal bill, and they can't get that many votes. If they get 50, then Vice President Mike Pence can come in, as he did yesterday, and give his 51st vote and get that repeal bill through. But the Republican senators are divided on this. Senators voted last night on a so-called compromise by Mitch McConnell, but they voted against it. Mitch McConnell cannot get the 50 votes he needs. They're now voting apparently on a bare-bones plan, and this is sort of the slimmed-down version of the repeal. They want, and we're talking about Republican senators led by Mitch McConnell, what they want to do is essentially get rid of the mandate, the individual mandate that says you've got to buy health insurance, and they also want to get rid of the employer mandate that says employers of a certain size have got to provide health insurance. And on the basis of this slimmed-down version, the plan is, that is Mitch McConnell's plan, Republican leadership plan, is to then get a vote, 51 votes on this slimmed-down version, take it to the House Republicans, and get a conference agreement with regard to repealing and quote-unquote replacing Obamacare, replacing the Affordable Care Act. They are swimming upstream. In the Senate, Senate Republicans don't like this, partly because it makes no sense. That is, if you get rid of the individual mandate, if you say to younger and healthier people, you no longer have to get health insurance, you no longer have to be part of the same insurance pool as older and sicker people, then those older and sicker people are going to have to pay more. They are no longer being subsidized by the younger and healthier. And that means that if they're no longer subsidized, not only are they going to have to pay more, they may not even have any access to health insurance because the deductibles, the premiums, the co-payments are going to be so much greater. So behind this slimmed-down version of this McConnell, the latest McConnell Senate bill that the Republicans are now considering in the Senate, is basically a plot to unravel the Affordable Care Act, as every one of these bills is. And there are a number of Republicans who say, wait a minute, we don't want this because that's going to mean a lot of our constituents are going to lose out. A lot of our constituents are going to lose coverage, either losing coverage under the Affordable Care Act or under Medicaid. And that's the drama. It's going on right now. But let me just point out an additional issue here. It's not just that Senate Republicans are voting on whether to remove tens of millions of people, possibly from health care. It's also that Mitch McConnell is basically taking Senate procedures and ripping them up. You know, there used to be a Senate process. Bills had to be looked at by committees, and the committees deliberated, and they thought about the bills, and the expert witnesses came in on both sides and gave senators an opportunity to deliberate. Not only were there hearings, but the Congressional Budget Office would provide its own expertise in terms of the consequences of a particular bill, the economic consequences. And then there would be an opportunity for free and open debate on the basis of the authorizing committee, the oversight committee, and the Congressional Budget. In other words, senators would have a lot of input. The public would know what is in a bill. What Mitch McConnell did yesterday was he demanded that Republican senators vote to begin debate on what? On nothing. On a bill that did not exist. A non-existent bill. It is the first time in Senate history, as far as I can tell, and I've researched this somewhat, that the Senate has voted to begin debate on a non-bill, on a non-existent bill, without any input of any of the committees, without any input of any experts, without anything. And remember, this is an issue that could end the coverage, healthcare coverage, of tens of millions of people. It could, and it will, affect 1/6 of the entire United States economy. It is a huge deal. It is a huge issue. So right now we have the spectacle of the Senate under Mitch McConnell debating something that no senator has actually seen, debating sort of theoretical ideas, a slimmed down version of the Affordable Care Act, or the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, that even the Congressional Budget Office has not given any analysis of. Senators whose staffs have not seen anything. This is a fundamental violation of how our democracy is supposed to operate, folks. And this is brought to you by the same Mitch McConnell who, when he became majority leader, you remember, he said his number one priority was not to improve the middle class or provide better education or infrastructure or lower people's taxes or do anything that most majority leaders want to do. His number one priority, he said when he became majority leader, was what? To make sure that Barack Obama did not get a second term as president. And then this is the same Mitch McConnell who, in the last year of Barack Obama's administration, would not even hold a hearing on Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court. Held it up. Didn't even provide a hearing. This is the same Mitch McConnell who took Donald Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court and basically said to the Democrats in the Senate, you are no longer going to have anything to say because I'm ripping up the rule that once required 60 votes before a Supreme Court nominee could be confirmed. This is the same Mitch McConnell who right now is having no hearings, is having absolutely no input from experts, the Congressional Budget Office, no input from the authorizing committees, is holding a debate over a non-existent bill that is going to affect potentially tens of millions of people who will lose their health insurance, 1/6 of the American economy. Mitch McConnell has no concept, no respect for the rule of law or our democratic institutions. For him, as for Donald Trump, it's all about winning at any price, whatever it takes, even if you trample on democratic institutions, even if you trample on processes. Donald Trump is exactly the same. But at least Donald Trump, he doesn't have an excuse, but one could say, in theory, Donald Trump has had no experience in politics. He was just a business leader. It wasn't even a business leader. He had his own private little firm. It wasn't even a publicly held firm. It was Donald Trump was his dictator of his own little Trump enterprise. And so you take a dictator of a little Trump enterprise and you put him as president, and maybe you get somebody who doesn't care about democracy. Not an excuse, not a justification, but maybe an explanation. Mitch McConnell has no excuse. Mitch McConnell has been in the Senate. Mitch McConnell understands democracy. At least he should. How is it possible for anybody in good conscience, and I'm talking now about not just Mitch McConnell, but also the 50 Republicans Republican senators who yesterday voted in favor of starting debate on this non-bill, this non-existent bill. How is it possible in good conscience to agree to have a debate on a bill that could cause tens of millions of people to lose their coverage, affect 1/6 of the economy, and have no information about the bill? And how can you inflict so much potential harm on your constituents, you Republican senators? How could anyone put party over country in this shameful away. Democracy is about process. It can be a frustrating process, but it is better than the alternative, which is a dictatorship. Trump, doesn't reveal his tax returns. He doesn't put his business into a blind trust. He lies with him. He lies. I came across, there was a poll that was done just 5 days ago that showed that 47% of Republicans now believe that Donald Trump won the presidency by the popular vote of the United States. 42%, only 42% of Americans think that's wrong, think that Donald Trump did not win the presidency by popular vote. 47% of Americans believe he won the presidency by popular vote because he has lied. This is what tyrants in history have done. You tell big lies over and over again, and you convince people that your lies are the truth and that the truth is a lie. So not only does Donald Trump not respect democratic processes, but he continues to move down the authoritarian, dictatorial road without any respect for what our forefathers have provided. A few days ago, he angrily tweeted, you might have seen this quote, "It's very sad that Republicans, even some that were carried over the line on my back, do very little to protect their president," unquote. That was his tweet. Their president? Republicans' president? Presidents, are supposed to be all of our presidents. They're supposed to be our public servants. They're supposed to be answering to us. And what does Donald Trump think he deserves protection from? From the truth? All he cares about is power and money. But the President of the United States and the majority leader of the Senate, they have responsibilities to our democratic system of government. Yesterday, John McCain, returning from Arizona, where he is being treated for brain cancer, made a speech on the Senate floor about the rule of law and about democratic process. Now, I want to just quote this a little bit because it is important in present context. This is John McCain's words. He said, "We've tried to do this by coming up with a proposal behind closed doors in consultation with the administration and then springing it on skeptical members, trying to convince them it's better than nothing, asking us to swallow our doubts and force it past a unified opposition. I don't think that is going to work in the end, and it probably shouldn't." Well, McCain is obviously right, but if he's so right, why did he come back from Arizona, from where he's being treated for a brain tumor, to cast a vote in favor of starting debate on this non-existent bill? Now listen, the next days are critical. I know it's summer. I know you are tired. In fact, I keep on running into people who say, I'm not even reading the newspapers. I can't bear to read the newspapers. I can't bear to read the news. I can't bear to see newscasts. I can't bear it anymore. It's just driving me crazy. I know that. I understand. But the next days are critical, and here is what are the kinds of things you can do to help. Number one, join a rally in your area to keep the Affordable Care Act. Groups across the country are holding events to keep up the pressure, and that is important. Number two, if you live in a blue state, call people in red states, get them organized, get them mobilized. Keep up the pressure, number three, on key Republicans. There are 10 states here whose senators are going to be absolutely critical. All 10 of these states depend upon expanded Medicaid. Their constituents in these states are going to be particularly hurt if there is a repeal or even a partial repeal of the Affordable Care Act. These 10 states are Alaska, Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, Louisiana, Maine, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. These are 10 states in particular whose senators are vulnerable if the public finds out how badly they're going to be shafted by any either full or partial repeal of the Affordable Care Act. If you live in one of these states, please visit. There's a site that I highly recommend. It's called TrumpCare10.org. All right, TrumpCare10. TrumpCareNet. TrumpCare10.net.org. TrumpCare10.org. Why do I have so much time saying that? So much trouble saying that. I'm going to do it once more, all right? You can read it, even if I can't say it. TrumpCare10.org. Go there, and if you live in one of these states, visit TrumpCare10.org for daily scripts and the best ways to reach your senators. Remember, yesterday's vote to start that debate over a non-existent bill squeaked through with the vice president breaking the tie. Now all we need is one more senator. Kudos to Lisa Murkowski from Maine, and also wonderful Senator Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. They deserve your thanks. But all we need is one more senator, basically to hold out, one more Republican senator, and we can kill this for good, this Republican attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act. The other thing I just want to remind you of, if you weren't aware of it, is that in 2018 and 2020, there are 31 Republican senators running for re-election. And 22 of those 31 Republican senators who are going to be up for re-election very soon will be running in states where the number of people losing health coverage under the Senate's repeal and so-called replace bills, any one of them, is greater than their margin of victory in their last election. Did you understand what I just said? I'll say it again. We've got 31 Republican senators who are up for re-election in 2018 and 2020. 22 of them are going to be running in states where the number of people losing health coverage under any of the Senate proposals is greater than their own margin of victory in their last elections. So if their own constituents understand what is at stake and threaten to hold them accountable, this shameful effort will not have a chance. All right, your questions. Annie Rodriguez, you ask, how do we stop Trump and his Republican backers? What can normal people do as a unified front? Well, Annie, I think besides organizing and mobilizing, that is, I have said before, please do indivisibleguide.com. Indivisibleguide.com. Go to indivisibleguide.com. Go to this site, and it will give you a lot of very, very important information. Also, swingleft.org. These are two sites that I highly recommend, in addition to the one that I was having such a hard time pronouncing, TrumpCare10.org. Because you, on your own, Annie, you know, it's important that you are active, it's important that you express yourself, that your voice is loud, but with others, when you are joined together, when you are a part of a large and growing group that is expressing yourself, your voice is 1,000-fold louder. And make sure that your representatives hear you. Mobilize and organize, not just with regard to keeping the Affordable Care Act, but also with regard to stopping Trump's antics and stopping the Republicans and making sure that in 2018, next year, it's not that far away, next year in the midterms, the Republicans lose control of the House and lose control of the Senate. Paula Lim, why would GOP senators listen to the cry of their voters if they have wealthy donors willing to back them? Paula, let me just say something to those of you who are, and your question reveals to me that you may be among these people, who think that money is everything in politics. It's not everything in politics. In fact, what we've seen, and many of you experienced this with regard to the Bernie Sanders campaign, that was based on very small donations. It's organizing. It's about mobilizing. It's about energizing. It's about turnout. Turnout is the biggest issue with regard to campaigns. The party of non-voters, people who have not even voted over the last several elections, is larger than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And so if you can get some of those non-voters to vote, you can actually have a huge impact. And advertisements on television or whatever don't have any impact on these non-voters. Okay, Meredith Rose. Who is running the country? I'm not being facetious. I really don't know. It isn't the president, who appears to be focused on everything but his job, and it isn't the GOP majority in Congress, who can't get out of their repeal Obamacare rut. So who is running the country then? Well, this is going to have to be the last question. But let me just say, Meredith, we are not being governed right now. And this is a huge problem for the United States. It is making a mockery of our democracy around the world, but also a lot of our allies are very concerned about it around the world. Our traditional adversaries, people, the kind of countries that are competing with us for power, China and Russia, they're delighted. We have a United States that has let me not be too insulting, and I don't want to be harsh, but let me just say buffoon in the presidency, who has created utter chaos in the White House, and who has put into every department people who don't know what they're doing. And we have Republicans in Congress who can't even get together to govern, even with regard to something that they have promised to do for 7 years. I'm glad that they can't, by the way. But they can't even get together around something as simple as infrastructure, where Democrats are prepared to join with Republicans in an infrastructure bill, a major infrastructure bill. Where is it? Why can't they even do that? There is no governing coalition in the United States right now, and that is a huge problem for us, Meredith. So are we going to get through the next year until we have a Democratic Congress that is capable of asserting some leadership? Maybe. I hope so. Are we going to be able to get through the next year and a half until we have a new Republican, until we basically get Trump out of the White House and not have a Republican at all? Hopefully have a Democratic president who is exerting true leadership. I don't know. This worries me immensely. I want to just end this on a personal note. I've spent just about 50 years of my life in and out of government, observing it, trying to help craft public policies that help most Americans. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen it this bad. I've never seen leaders like Donald Trump, so-called, and Mitch McConnell, who don't give a damn, who are only in it for winning and only in it for themselves. I think our institutions of government are strong enough, our system is strong enough, our founding fathers created a system that is strong enough, but it is being tested. You are all being tested. We are all being tested. So, my final note to you is, even though it is awful, it is a continuous nightmare, you're under a great deal of stress, I don't think Americans have ever felt this degree of stress as a whole, and I'm not talking about the stress of a Great Depression or the stress of a world war. I'm talking about the stress of being without a government and being led by somebody who is like Donald Trump ever before. But we will prevail. We will prevail. We, the people of the United States, will prevail. I'll see you next time.